Okay, let's go. No, good evening. Thank you, Apostle Barnes, for the initiative that we can have this discussion and stimulate some further discussion and stimulate debate and have this battle of ideas out there. My name is Attie Vannel. I'm originally from Kimberley. I am an entrepreneur. I operate in the business world, but I also have one foot in the kingdom world, in the church, as the planter and the overseer of Crossover City Church in Kimberley. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you for your time.
So, Apostle, the reason why I felt us doing this is that after the president's last speech in the week, you wrote an article that you address as Dear Mr. President. And I know you've done several articles before because this is where your heart and your passion is. And in that article, we know currently also there are different views and ideas of what should be done pertaining to the issue of the economy, etc. But in the article, you and I know you're a person that respects authority. If there's someone that doesn't override or undermine authority, it's you. So when I saw the article, I knew you're writing from a good place and not from a place of necessarily being critical, but also various people have different perspectives based on where they're at. And because you are actively involved in the context of the economy, SMEs, etc., your angle would be different than the person maybe who works at a factory or in a shop or that is a school teacher. So in the article you mentioned you felt that the president was not really holding the steering wheel properly. He missed a great opportunity to bring calmness with the turmoil we have outside there, etc. So can you just tell us what is it, or what are you seeing in that context? What did the president miss in his last speech?
Let us be fair to the president and the cabinet. The scale and the scope of COVID-19
yes,
is unprecedented.
Yes.
There was no textbook. There was no similar previous situation where the necessary know-how or skill set could be built.
Right.
They had to go as they learn and learn as they go. Now, President Ramaphosa started out exceedingly well.
Right.
For two reasons and two reasons only. He decided to lead a COVID-19 response that was informed by evidence.
Right.
So here he came out very bold, very confident, and very correctly, telling us that the national executive, which is the cabinet, will take their cue from people who know.
Right.
And South Africa is blessed with people in the know who are world renowned.
Right.
So it is scientific input that advised the hard lockdown.
Yes.
Because we had to achieve three things in the hard lockdown. We had to flatten the curve, or how we colloquially say, we needed to retard the spread of the virus. Secondly, we needed to get the health system to be systems ready.
Right.
So we needed to beef up the beds. We need to recall retired health professionals. We needed to put in place the policy framework and the budgetary provision that could handle this crisis.
Yes.
But thirdly, and this is what the president told us on the night of 23 March 2020 when he announced the hard lockdown, is that obviously we need to just buy time to do some benchmarking and also learn from international best practice.
Yes.
Now, Apostle, it's important that we frame the debate correctly, because if we don't frame the debate correctly, we will be seized with the wrong issues and we will arrive at the wrong conclusion.
Definitely, definitely.
So the president achieved something that no other president has achieved in democratic South Africa.
Mhm.
When the 13 leaders of all the political parties met him that day, you had as far right as the Freedom Front and as far left as the EFF,
Yes.
and everyone in between.
That's right.
Agreeing with the president.
Yes.
Because our response was evidence-led, and what he came to sell, we were prepared to purchase because the price was sacrifice.
Yes.
Now, that was a special moment as a South African. I had goosebumps that day as I saw the leaders of all the political parties in parliament rally around President Ramaphosa.
Yes.
You know, he used his tremendous skill of negotiation and bridge building to rally us, all of us, around the national interest.
Yes.
And so we gave up many of our rights. We allowed this intrusion. We allowed the suspension of basic human rights. We allowed the army onto our streets. And we allowed so many things.
Right.
To in the national interest.
Right.
That was a perfect start. That was a perfect start.
Right.
Then the ministers started developing the regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's the first thing that went wrong. Because it was clear that in many of the regulations, science was no longer the premise upon which the regulations were based.
Right.
You know, if you just look at last week, probably in that one example alone of the Minister of Trade and Industry giving us a list of things that you can buy at the clothing store.
Right.
And you cannot buy sandals and you cannot buy a short sleeve vest, dealing with an adult population. So when someone as powerful as Dr. Glenda Gray, who is the chair of the South African Medical Research Council, comes and tell you there is no longer a scientific basis for extending the lockdown.
Right.
Then under the leadership of the president, there was now an important departure from the original evidence-led response to now when it's no longer on the basis of evidence.
Right. Right. I hear you. So what is it that you feel the president should have said in his last address, or where do you feel he missed it, or what could he have done differently? Because you say
when President Ramaphosa came out,
you're saying yourself it's a tall order because it's a very complex situation based on the virus still spreading, and it was not to flatten the curve, it was just to delay the virus, to give them time to prepare the medical field for what was coming, because they kept saying that the curve will come in September. But what do you feel the president...
The spike will come. Yes. So let me put it to you this way. If the best scientists in South Africa, including Dr. Karim, who is the chairperson of the Ministerial Advisory Committee,
right,
which is the platform that basically advises governments' policy regime to respond to the pandemic.
Right.
If they tell us we cannot prevent the spike, we can only retard it.
Yes.
So that we get systems ready, budget ready, and infrastructure ready. It then means the following. If I'm a student at a tertiary institution and I take a doctor's certificate not to write an exam,
right,
or a certain test, I cannot prevent the test.
Yes.
I can only, with a medical certificate, postpone the test.
Yes.
I'm going to write it in a week or two. Okay, it's inevitable. So I needed the president to come on Wednesday night and address us in the following way. And I'm trying to answer your question about what my expectations were.
Yes.
I needed the president first and foremost to tell South Africans unambiguously that the conduct of the armed forces is wrong.
Right.
He's condemning it in no uncertain terms. He has instituted urgent investigations.
Right.
And he has called the command of the South African National Defence Force and the police services to remind them that he has ordered them on Thursday night, 26 March, to
Right.
go out there and to abandon any notion of Skopskiet and Donna.
Right, and that's the word he used.
So first and foremost, as the commander-in-chief, he had to take back control of the armed forces who were now turning society into an enemy force.
Definitely.
I have never seen drug lords being manhandled and physically abused during arrest in the way I have seen ordinary working class South African. And let us not fool each other for any moment. There is no evidence to suggest that this vulgar behavior was visited upon the rich or the upper middle classes or in the suburbs.
Right.
This was meted out and reserved solely for the working class and the poor. So he did not do it. The president had an opportunity when Mayor Spielman of Machabeng was encouraging soldiers to be brutal towards the colored community of Bronville. He never instructed the Minister of Defense, Nosiviwe Mapisa Nzakula, or the Chief of the National Defense Force to take that back, to contradict that. He never instructed that mayor to tender an apology. Obviously, the president does not exercise direct control over a mayor. That is in the hands of the speaker and the council, who could not convene, but at least coming out unambiguously and condemning the incident. So first and foremost, it's where his speech failed me. Secondly, there is something called the national mood. There is something called the public pulse. And somehow I felt that his closest advisors and the people whose mouths are closest to his ear has failed to appraise him of how the national consensus and the national unity achieved on 23 March has started shifting away from him, mainly through the fact that there is now a growing view amongst the citizens that science is no longer the basis for regulation. Science is no longer the basis for persisting with a drawn-out easing of the lockdown regulations, and that some people in his cabinet may have failed him in terms of how these were packaged and sold to make sense and be on the basis of being legal, justified, and rational. So secondly, he didn't give me the idea that he has a firm grasp of the national mood and how now all of a sudden there is a growing discord amongst the population.
Right.
But thirdly, I needed him to come out and to give us a very clear economic recovery strategy.
Right.
Make firm announcements, not postpone the announcements to a later date, not tone down the announcements that ministers will give more clarity. He had to come out and give us the statesman quality that we have seen him doing on the 23rd of March. So as he made that speech, and as I saw the next morning and even late that night, it was I decried the fact that people now remember the speech for him having said kissing is now something of the past. I mean, if that is what the speech was remembered for, and our president is much more capable than that. I think South Africans are holding him to the standard because we have an appreciation of what his potential is.
Definitely, definitely. Apostle, now dealing with, I know where your passion is because you are very much involved when it comes, as I said earlier on, the context of SMEs. You work with a lot of tertiary institutions. You write policies for institutions, policies for some government regulations, and so on. So dealing with the issue of the opening of the economy with COVID lingering, is it either or can you do both at the same time? And how do you see us move forward, especially where they talk about at least 6 of the provinces going to level 3? What would be the best way to approach this from where you're sitting, and what is the damage that has been done dealing with SMEs, etc.?
Apostle, anyone who wants to pretend that the debate regarding COVID-19 is framed in the context of saving lives,
right,
versus saving livelihoods,
right,
has basically articulated a false dichotomy. Right. There is no versus here. Saving lives and saving livelihoods are 2 sides of the exact same coin.
Right.
We are not, as South Africans, embroiled in a fight that is either or. Mm-hmm. It's a both. Just in the first 6 weeks since COVID started, in the first 6 weeks, Kulula is going into business rescue. Mm-hmm. Caxton has closed about 10 titles like Bona, Vrouwekeer, Roy, Rosa. Those are established businesses.
Established, yeah. Yes.
Epcon is collapsing. Epcon just received 1.2 billion last year from the PIC as an injection to save it from collapse, because right. Directly and indirectly, Epcon is responsible for 141,000 jobs.
Jobs, yes.
Yes, that is just the obvious people that we know about. I saw something last week, Thursday, that says already 17 companies have filed with the CCMA Section 189 notices. That right. is their intention to retrench.
Yes.
Now, let us not forget, over the last 5 years, our annual economic growth was hovering around the 1%, and we actually need between 5 and 7% to extricate this country out right. of the 10 million people who are unemployed. So yes. We entered COVID with 1% economic growth, 370 billion budget deficit, because for this financial year, South Africa needs 1.98 trillion, and SARS said it can only collect 1.58 trillion.
Yes.
So that's already a budget deficit of 370 billion.
Right.
Add now to that 370 billion, another 285 billion that the commissioner of SARS tells us, because of the declining economic activity, we won't be able to get that revenue.
Definitely, yes.
Add to that the loans that we're going to have to make from the IMF and the World Bank, the terms they're going to set, and how we're going to repay those loans with the declining revenue.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Add to that fact the amount of retrenchment. So why this debate is framed wrong is because daily, if you switch on the news stations, they hit you in the left-hand corner with the current rates of transmission and the number of deaths.
Yes.
But they don't, on the other side of the TV, in the right corner, show you the number of suicides, right. the number of people retrenched, right. the number of houses that goes for auction, the number of cars that are repossessed, the number of businesses that are facing complete collapse and foreclosure. So unless you run a balanced picture,
and you weigh the two,
skewed.
Yes. No, keep going. I'm just saying, and you yes. weigh the two against each other. You can have.
You must weigh the two all the time.
Yes.
Whatever our response is, for every person that we're gonna test, for every school kid that we're gonna buy a mask for right. every university that we're gonna disinfect, for every hospitalized person that we're gonna have to put on a ventilator, the economy must pay for it. So right. it's not an either or debate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a both.
I hear you. It's both. Yeah. So
an example to the president in my letter. I said to the president, I have a gentleman working for me in the garden. His name is Franz. Franz is employed by 3 households, all of them in estates. He works twice a week by each of them. He earns 200 rand a day. So he works from Monday to Saturday. So he earns 1,200 rand a week. So he earns 4,800 rand a month.
Yes.
Franz can't come back to work. Here's my question. Name me one occupation that is more socially distant than a gardener.
Yeah, he's on his own.
Who does he interact with when he cleans the pool, when he washes the car,
doesn't even
when he mows the lawn?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Now he can't come into the estate to earn 1,200 rand a week or 4,800 rand a month. We refer him to SASSA, who's going to pay him 350 rand a month, which is not even 10% of the 4,800 that he could have earned.
Right.
Again, I'm saying, where is the rationality and the justification
how the policy
for suspending France's right to work?
Right. I see what you say. It's clear, as you started off by saying, that there wasn't or there isn't a textbook for this. And so a lot of the policies that they came up with, there wasn't time maybe to think it through properly. So currently, with where the economy is going, I was mentioning in my talk this morning of what Dr. Rupert was saying, that this is not a pause, it's a reset, because the damage done to the economy, it will take more than 3 years to recover. So coming out of COVID, as you say, if people are going to start getting ill and be hospitalized and must go onto ventilators hitting September, October, then who's going to pay for that? But it's a very difficult decision.
The argument is very simple. Let's go back to what Professor Karim told the Ministerial Advisory Committee. Let us go back to what the South African Medical Research Council has brought out as a consensus opinion.
Right.
We cannot avoid the spike.
Yes, they said that.
So let's say, because we don't know what the current modeling is, let's say worst case scenario, in our spike, 2 million people will be impacted directly.
Okay.
Through viral infection.
Yes.
Let's say that's going to be our spike at the end of August. The only thing that the lockdown brought us is to move it from May to September.
Yes, yes.
Cannot prevent it.
By time.
Can I put it a different way? Today is day 51 of the lockdown. We have tested just over 400,000 people.
Right.
At 1,200 rand per person. So to have tested 400,000 people cost the fiscus 528 million rand.
Right.
So let's say we are able to double that capacity to 20,000 people a day. Then it means in the next 100 days, at 20,000, because currently we're testing at about 14,000 people a day.
Right.
So let's say we are able to test at 30,000 a day. In the next 100 days.
Yes.
Then come end of June, July, August. Come end of August, we would have tested 3 million people. But there's 59 million people in the country. So, so keeping us under lockdown to trace and track. If you look at the numbers, there is no rational support for a continued lockdown.
Right.
Now that's the first problem. The second problem is, if we hit the spike and we have 2 or 3 million people infected by end of August, do we want to hit that spike with people in jobs and a functioning economy that can collect taxes? Or do we want to hit that spike with an impoverished populace, a collapsed fiscus, and a collapsed economy?
Right.
And that is why I say there's no either or in this context here.
Yeah,
because right now, what the president sold us on the 23rd of March, he sold us sacrifice. That was the price.
Yes.
Now the price has escalated to financial ruin.
Yeah. No. It's a very complex situation. So, in what you're saying is that somehow they must find a middle ground, so that both can be looked at the same time. so that the economy can start rolling while we're also dealing with the challenge of COVID?
We have to get to lockdown level 2 as soon as possible. And we have to do it for 3 reasons. One, that is what the best scientists advise us.
Right.
Because we want to have an evidence-led strategy.
Yes.
I don't think we should fear the fact that if 100,000 people or 200,000 people gets infected quickly, that it will be attributed to the fact that the lockdown was lifted.
Right.
Because scientists tell us we cannot avoid that.
Can't avoid it.
It's
like the flu.
It's unavoidable.
It will eventually get it, or most of us will eventually get it.
That's the first reason why we need to get there. The second reason why we need to get there, both in the formal and in the informal economy, we have millions of people who are currently starving.
Yes.
And the second point to that second point is they don't have to.
Yes.
Come and ask you a simple question. Why couldn't we open up fast food outlets in lockdown level 5 already?
But especially drive-through.
What is the danger for you to buy Nando's through a drive-through?
Apostle, for me,
you get what I'm saying?
To deliver is more contact than to have a drive-through. You sit in your car, there's no contact.
That is my issue, exactly. So there are a range of jobs. I mean, people checking into a guest house. That's such a controlled environment, a hotel. That's such a controlled environment because remember, gatherings are not allowed.
Yes.
So they cannot use the conference facilities. Mm-hmm. If they then simply cancel the buffet lunches and dinners and breakfast and deliver those meals only to the room, that's a highly controlled environment. Yes. Why should they be closed? And why should we put those jobs at risk? And I mean, there's a range, just that time does not allow. There's a range of occupations and sectors that are currently at home that should not be at home, that should not be relying on a 350 rand, which was a noble gesture, which is a very humanitarian gesture, which was a great gesture. I'm a long supporter of the basic income grant over many, many years. Yes. But I'm saying that people come out, earn their salary, keep the tax base functional, collect taxes, and let us face the spike without starvation. That's the second reason why we need to get as quickly as possible to level 2. But the third reason, the National Treasury brought out a document in which it projected, now this is Treasury. Treasury has told the executive that we face the risk of losing between 3 and 7 million jobs. Whoa. Now remember, we entered COVID with already 10 million South Africans out of a job.
Yes.
Okay? We're about to lose between 3 and 7. If the worst case scenario manifests, then it means that South Africa will enter an epoch in which there are more people outside of employment than people in employment. That is the ideal recipe for social unrest, for uncontrollable protest action, because if someone must choose between being possibly infected but being currently starving, which is a reality versus a potential reality, I can tell you now, no amount of police and army brutality will be able to contain that public backlash.
Apostle, I pray that we do not go there, but we also know that what we are facing as a country is not unique to us because it's a world phenomenon in what COVID brought. But let me go to another point and pick your brain on this, because this is another contentious issue that we don't just have in South Africa. In the US, around the world, it's been contentious. The issue of the church being released as an essential service from day one when COVID started. What is your view on it, and even where the current level 4 is moving on to level 3? What is your view?
Again, let us be fair to the president.
Yes.
He has consulted widely. widely because he's a consensus type of a leader.
Yes.
So the criticism I'm about to give is not directed to government, it's directed to the church itself.
Right.
The business delegation who went to sit with the president prior to the lockdown used the opportunity to lobby the president that the government must outsource to business. They went under an umbrella body called Business for South Africa.
Okay.
And they lobbied the president successfully to outsource to them the supply chain of certain protective equipment and things that we needed for COVID. Up to R1 billion, past R1 billion that's in the Solidarity Fund.
Yes.
They make those appointments. At the very same time, the church went. And unlike a real Joseph, who can seize the opportunity for having an interface with influence and with power,
right,
we did not apply our mind.
Yes.
We came out of consultation without pointing out to the president that firstly, spiritual care is an essential service.
Right.
Right?
Right.
People were about to be retrenched.
Yes.
To be paid only in half, have had their hours cut, had their lives as they know it suspended temporarily.
Right, right. So
look at the spike in domestic violence. And yet, all of those is not your typical hardcore crimes.
Yes.
It requires social workers and it requires spiritual care alongside the criminal justice system.
Right.
Social workers were at work. The criminal justice system in the form of police and the courts were at work. But the third leg of spiritual care, because all of these people are our constituents. They
Yes.
sit on our pews.
Yes.
And we could not say to the president, declare spiritual care an essential service.
Right.
And one gentleman up here in Joburg, Bishop Ramalane, started the campaign to do it. He was not really supported due to intra-church politics.
Right.
And by the time we woke up, it was already towards the end of level 4 now. But I think that is the first thing that has gone wrong.
Right.
Completely, absolutely wrong. That we lack the foresight that with the permission of the church. So you cannot really nail the government or criticize them harshly. Because they consulted the church and the church lacked the foresight to understand how critical and essential its role was. And it was written out of the script by consultation.
Right.
The second place where we were failed by the people who went to consult the president on behalf of the church. No other formation has the footprint, the infrastructure, and the proximity to poverty than the church.
Right.
Why the church did not lobby the president to outsource to it the distribution of food parcels and other forms of care is beside me. Right. I truly cannot understand it. Because what do you offer the government when you offer them? You offer them infrastructure, you offer them integrity. Look at the litany of cases now across the country of investigations and even arrests for corruption and maladministration in the procurement and the distribution exactly
and we still
of food parcels. Had that function been given to the church, but here the president sits with church leaders who don't alert him to this fact and say, we have a footprint and a proximity to this, to where the need is that no one can compete with.
Definitely.
But thirdly, where the church failed us, the church never availed to government its immense infrastructure muscle.
Yes.
How many owners of church buildings, I'm not talking about people maybe who rent, who may not have that leeway in the rental agreement that say you cannot further outsource. But congregations who own the building that they are in have not said to the government, you need extra beds. Come set up a temporary hospital here. You need to bring in for a period of 6 weeks the homeless, come use our church. And it was a breathtakingly missed opportunity for the church.
Yes, yes.
To present itself as the authentic mandate carrier of the mandate to care for the poor, to put the poor on the agenda, to avail, because the church mainly suffers from a dichotomy where it can only be a receiver of charity and never a dispenser of charity.
That's a good point.
And that is why we miss that opportunity to avail a massive infrastructure.
That's a good point.
You know, I wanted something aloud, Apostle. When the Minister of Education announced that there are 3,500 schools with no reliable water source, potable water.
Right.
The only potable water is merely an engineering term that means reliable, clean water. So they cannot open those schools unless they have now first contracted water delivery to those schools.
Yes.
The first question that came to mind, what are the churches saying who have buildings close to where those 3,500 schools operate? Right. Why can't those kids be housed temporarily per grade in each of the churches around that school?
Right.
So we have been exposed as lacking a clear and succinct understanding of our mandate.
Right, right. Apostle, I know we can still say a lot, but the time is running out. We are on Zoom time. Your insights are tremendous, and I believe that the people that will watch this will be tremendously blessed from different angles. Just one more point I want to put out to you. There's a whole notion where white South Africans are turned away that are really in need of social help, where they are being told that these food parcels or these grants are for people of color only. I know you are a person that believes that if anything is not accessible equally to everyone, it's not a kingdom model. But I know your heart for social justice. For you, it's not about black and white. It's not about ethnicity. It's about doing the right thing. Just briefly, what is your view on that thinking at the moment?
Apostle, we need to come out on a daily basis and condemn that in the harshest terms.
Yes.
That is not the South Africa that the founding fathers bequeathed us. That is not the constitutional democracy that this country is premised on. The Bill of Rights guarantees universal franchise. That's the whole point of the struggle that was waged against colonialism and apartheid.
Yes.
So in a humanitarian crisis, we cannot apply such arbitrary and inhumane requirements for access to assistance.
Yes.
One of the things that I also need to critique again about the church, if we have petitioned the government to use the church for humanitarian assistance, right, many of these things, including this one, could have been avoided.
Yes.
So you cannot refuse an individual or a household food or a blanket or a roof over their heads on the basis of the color of their skin. It goes against the very moral grain of the struggle against the inhumaneness of apartheid.
Yes, yes. Apostle, I thank you for your insight. I think in ending talking around the church and the missed opportunity, it is inevitable that we should be a voice, we should be a conscience, and as the church, we must speak truth to power. So thank you for allowing me to pick your brain and giving tremendous insight from your perspective. And we are not here to criticize our leaders. We pray for them, but we must also speak because we have the right to do that. Apostle, blessings to you and your family. And just a closing,
thank you so much, sir.
Closing word for those that are watching.
Look, as humans, we don't give ourselves enough credit for the type of trauma that we have survived.
Yes.
Individually, as a group, as a nation, and as humanity.
Yes. Yes.
COVID-19 will very soon be referred to only in our history books.
Definitely.
And we would have prevailed.
Yes.
There is no way that it will bring us down.
Amen.
But if we can be firm in our faith towards him who is the author and the finisher of our faith, who is Jesus,
Yes.
and we can infuse our policy responses with rational evidence-led responses, and we can maintain a unified approach and rally behind our leaders, there is no way. South Africans have survived worse.
Yes.
We have survived multiple generations of slavery, of disenfranchisement, and across the world. And there is no doubt that we will be delivered.
Amen.
By the author and the finisher of our faith. Hallelujah.
Lord Jesus Christ. Apostle, thank you so much. We declare that even this too shall pass. Thank you for your insights, and we're going to do some more programs.
Yes,
we
sir.
appreciate it, and thank you to those, our listeners. Keep watching as we are going to bring Apostle Attie back and pick his brain on more issues. Bless you, sir. Have a good night and a blessed time also to our listeners. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Amen.
Okay.